Hey everyone, welcome back to the Self-Leadership Lab, a podcast where we explore self-leadership to help us all lead ourselves better so we can show up and lead others better. Today, I'm really excited for a couple of reasons. I got a great guest, Olaolu Ogunyemi. I know, easy for me to say, apologize for bashing your name there, but this is the first in-studio podcast ever. So, Olu, why don't you introduce yourself and let everyone know a little bit about you, and then we'll get started.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Olaolu Ogunyemi. I am a U.S. Marine officer. I'm an author and founder of ParentChildConnect.com, which is just a platform that's built to provide resources to parents, teachers, mentors, and caregivers to help build the next generation of impactful leaders. So that's really what I do right now. I came from a small place called Ruston, Louisiana, and we call it small, but it has 26,000 people and it has a Walmart, and they're trying to put a Buc-ee's there. So that's our claim.
Oh, wow.
So we'll see if that happens. If not, then we'll just erase this from the records, hopefully. But aside from that, I grew up in a large family, and that means a lot to me. Family means a lot because it meant a lot to my family growing up. I was the fifth of six children. So when I grow up, I've grown up and had my own children. The only thing we emphasize in our home is teamwork and family and values. That's just, we're real big on that. So that's a lot about me. I love what I do. I love writing. I love working in the Marine Corps, and I love meeting new people. So it's a pleasure to be here.
Well, that's fantastic. And thank you for your service, first of all. And, going on that Buc-ee's. Man, my parents live in a town in Alabama, and they have a Buc-ee's. I walked in there one time. I was blown away. So for those of you who don't know, it's this huge gas station. I think they have like 100 pumps, and it's something surreal. So anyways, that's off topic. But every time I hear the word Buc-ee's, I got to smile, because if you haven't ever been to one or you pass one, stop by, because it'll blow your mind. It's like a Walmart and the biggest convenience store you've ever met all in one time. So anyway, so I know you've written children's books and you're very focused on parental leadership, but you have an upcoming book called Lead Last as well that's going to come out in the spring. So would you like to share a little bit about that leadership philosophy, and then we'll just touch all gamuts of leadership along this talk today?
Yeah, absolutely. So Lead Last is just one of those things that was really cool to me. I actually wrote the book, or came up with the idea after being in the code, and which I'm not a huge fan of, but I went for a run in the code, and I was thinking about what it means to be an effective leader. And a lot of times when we talk about effective leadership, we start to think about us. And I actually read a book by Tony Dungy, and it talks about how we spend too much time not really focusing on the people we're leading. And I was like, man, that's a pretty cool concept. And so that's where Lead Last came from. It was a desire to understand what it truly means, understand yourself, understand the people you're leading and the environment you're in before you even attempt to lead. And so that was really the first part of that definition. And then the second part is truly, if we're going to be effective leaders, we got to do things that help us to leave a legacy that lasts beyond our tenure. And so that's where the title Lead Last comes from. And really the philosophy is just about serving others and finding ways to provide resources and to really help people thrive in their environment.
That's such a beautiful concept, because so much in leadership that I observe, and even in the academic side of the house, it's all about the position. And I think a lot of times leaders lose sight of why they're a leader to begin with. It's not a title, it's not a pay raise, it's not a whatever. It's to do something within it. What's the classical definition of leadership? Getting someone to do something they normally wouldn't do, right? I mean, that's probably a bad one. All my leadership professionals are probably cringing if they're even listening. But at the same time, it's more than that, right? Because again, it's getting people or someone to do something they want to do. So elaborate on that a little bit more about why that's important to you, and then maybe even how you've seen that in, the Marine Corps, because obviously you've got people under your command, and, and you're also being led by others as well. So you get to see it from both sides, right?
Yeah. So it's tough, and especially tough for emerging leaders, because you work extremely hard to get to where you are, right? So you go to college, you work your butt off, you get this internship so you can finally get to the corporate job, and you finally become a team lead. And then it's like, all right, what do I do from here? All the way to this point, it's been basically about the individuals, finding ways that I'm going to score higher on tests, or finding ways I'm going to perform well in an interview to outdo the next person, or anything of that nature. And so finally you get to this point to where you've now made it to where you've been aspiring to be. And now you're leading in this environment, and you realize that, man, it's actually very tough. It's just another challenge. And yes, the company hired you because you're experienced. They hired you for your expertise and all these things. And it's almost a bit of a conundrum. It's really, there's a lot of tension there when you really think about it, because it's like, man, I'm hired for my expertise and my opinion and my ability to lead, but now I'm being told that I need to take a step back and listen to someone else. And so it is a bit hard. And so that's one of the things that I had to deal with as a brand new lieutenant. I had to learn that, these people have been in the Marine Corps. I had a guy who's in for 19 and a half years, and he came in, as soon as I checked in, automatically he works for me. And I had to learn very quickly that it's not all about what the lieutenant says, what he just learned in his, a year and a half maybe of education in school. It's more so about understanding what resource I had to bring to him. And that really was the tension that I felt as a brand new leader. And I think a lot of leaders feel, specifically as they get out of college in the first 5 to 10 years in the organization.
Yeah, there's two things I'd like to unpack there. I mean, one, like leadership in general, most leaders are hired based on a skill, knowledge, or ability, and nothing about leadership. Like you take the smartest guy in the room or the most skilled guy at engineering or whatever the craft is, and they put them as a leader. And then the second thing, and we'll address first and first is in the military we got it's a little bit of a leadership model. So let's talk about that next. But what do you think the biggest flaw in the I guess the traditional leadership path that we've got? Hey, you do work and you become skilled and then you become a leader. What can we do to change that in our own thinking, or the ones that we lead, or the companies that we were a part of?
Yeah, I think it's found in a good place, because, when you're, in theory, you're part of an organization, you're starting to grow, you learn the organization, and then you become a leader of those people. And I think that model had existed for years in many places. And in corporate America, for example, when I sat down with the CEO of Tyson at the time when I was there, it was Donnie Smith, and phenomenal guy. He was not your typical, businessman that was running the company as a CEO. Instead, he grew up, I think he got his degree in agriculture or something like that. And he bounced around the company in different locations. So when he was promoted to CEO, it was almost like a natural feel for him, because he knew a little bit of everybody around there, and he knew what everybody needed to be successful. On the other hand, you have a model like the military, for example. You have a guy like me who comes straight out of college. I was recruited because of my physical fitness and my education. And I was recruited for simply because I had the ability to lead on sports teams and things of that nature. Mm-hmm. And the Marine Corps in this model feels like they can probably refine me a little bit more in my leadership abilities by bringing me in and coaching and mentoring me and guiding me in those first few years. And that's where it gets tough, because I'm brand new. I don't know anything about the organization, yet I'm in charge of, when I first joined, 80 people. And so it's just things that I had to learn to grow through. And you're right, there is a way that we have to look at this as, should we hire someone just based upon their skills or based upon their knowledge? Mm-hmm. Or should we hire somebody who's experienced in the corporation? I think that's a natural tension with every organization.
Yeah, in the military is especially interesting because, like you said, it's a rank structure, and they call it a rank structure. And you get a lieutenant like you, and like you mentioned, the 19 and a half was probably this is where I don't know Marine ranks, probably senior gunnery out of master guns, right? Is that right? Yeah. Or what's the top? What's the top rank?
So for enlisted, it's master gunnery sergeant, and then the other one is sergeant major.
Okay, so is the sergeant major the E9, or are they both E9s?
They're both E9s.
Oh, they're both E9s. The one's command or whatever. So forgive I was Army for all those who were listening. The Army's a lot easier to, anyways, you've got this individual who's had 19 and a half years, and then you've got this 20-something-year-old boy essentially coming in. And I know it creates a lot of tension, but the military kind of does a pretty good job. I don't know, did anyone set you down and say, hey, Lieutenant, learn from these guys? Mm-hmm. Because you didn't have on-the-job training like they did. I mean, they had, 20 years. I mean, about as long as you've been alive, they had been doing that job. So how can we then take like that kind of mentality of working with all these people? Because all leaders are going to face it. They're going to face people with all skills, knowledge, abilities, experience, all that sort of thing. What did you learn from the military that we can apply to general leadership?
Yeah, absolutely. So intellectual humility is a thing. Mm-hmm. It's understanding that you're not the smartest one in the room every time you enter the room. And it's just impossible, statistically impossible for all of us to be smartest when we walk into a room. So you have to just realize that there's going to be somebody who knows something that you don't know, And then you have to become skilled in finding that person and asking for their opinion. And that's really what it's about, having those social cues and understanding to know that, hey, I'm not the smartest guy in the room. And though I am charged with making decisions and I'm charged with leading this team and all these wonderful things, it doesn't mean I have to make every single call or make every single idea and concept. So that's one of the lessons I learned very early, and I apply it even throughout my entire career, is that, we always have these stigmas, these things that we have in our minds that we have to do. We have to come up with these ideas. And when we're planning, we have to be in charge of the room. And there's been many times that I've sat in a room and looked around and said, you know what? You're more experienced than this. You're more experienced than I am in this regard. So why don't you come with me to this meeting? When I was at Tyson, for example, as a computer programmer, we were talking about programming, and I went straight into my manager's office one time, and I looked at my buddy, who was my mentor. He could do something in 2 minutes that I can do in 20 minutes. And I was just like, clearly this guy is more skilled at this. Why would I continue to try to just say, because you hired me to program, I'm going to program? No, maybe I'll be a better analyst. And then we come together and I can analyze a little bit better and talk to the business user. And maybe he's better at programming. Not maybe, he was 100% better at programming. It's just working through those personnel dynamics is what really our job is as leaders.
Yeah. There's the book Good to Great. They talk about the wrong people in the people on the bus in the wrong seat to do the job, and that's really what a leader really needs to be able to talk to their people and understand, and know that they're not the smartest person in the room. In fact, I think most leaders shouldn't be the smartest person in the room, because if they were, they wouldn't have time to lead. But I would take that analogy a little even further and say sometimes we're even on the wrong bus. And I find leaders especially are put on the wrong bus because, let's take computer programming. You're fantastic at it. And because you're so great at that, they then give you a charge of 20 people. But your part on the bus is probably in a dark corner by yourself for long hours and not communicating with people. How do you think we could do you have any thoughts on how we could speed up the process and select leaders better, or prepare people like this programmer, this fictional person we made up, is ready to then take on leadership when they're ready? Because obviously you want that expertise and you want that experience in your leadership team, but how do we balance that? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. So first of all, view structure. Because in many cases, and I'm talking about organization structure, there's many cases where you reward one and the technical guy, sometimes they go into the back corner, you almost forget about them. And that's really some of the things we have to look at is if you're just talking about like a programmer versus like a business user, it's easy to take that guy or gal who's really good at being a manager, really good at being a team lead, and just continue to promote. But then you have that programmer who maybe they're outgrowing your organization because you don't even have anywhere upward trajectory for them. And so that's what you have to look for, in my opinion. You have to start looking for those opportunities for those people who are specialized, and look for those opportunities who are just leaders in general, who know what they're doing, and they're just, I won't call them natural born, because I don't believe leaders are natural born, but they have the ability and skills to really lead a group of people. And so it's really just understanding what track, if you will, what career track is best associated with that individual, and then trying to make sure that your organization provides, say, a career track for them, because I think that's really where you get the maximum benefit out of individuals.
Yeah, and you bring up an interesting point. You said you don't believe leaders are born. That's a big argument in a leader. Are they born with it, or can you learn leadership? I fall into your camp. I think you can learn. I think there are natural charismatic people, or people who can, but that doesn't make you a leader. I'm almost thinking that like the leadership as we know it in society today kind of needs to be redefined, because a lot of times you hear, oh, this person is a great leader. Well, they weren't. They were just really great at what they were doing. So what would you recommend that we could do to help learn leaders? Like what would we need to teach them? Because most of the leadership stuff that I read and have gone through is more managerial. And it's about getting, like I say, getting that person to do what they don't want to do and then recording it. You have any thoughts on what we can do to actually truly develop leaders?
Yeah, first of all, we have to realize our minds have been programmed to that kind of leader, right? So you see even movies, like one of my favorite movies is the movie 300, right? So you look at King Leonidas out in front of his troops. He's like, doing the shield thing. He's really like getting everybody pumped up, and then his wife takes over. It's a phenomenal movie,
right?
But that's what our minds have been programmed to think what leadership is. It's like we're out in front, we're always leading, and that's just who you have to be. But in reality, we have to just start thinking about who are the most influential leaders in our life. It wasn't just the people who just got us to do something, got us to accomplish a mission, or got us to impact the bottom line in favor of the company. It was people who looked out for you, truly understood how to maximize your potential within that position. And I think that's what we have to start doing. We have to look at these leaders and say, okay, why do I believe that they're a phenomenal leader specifically for me? And then start writing down those characteristics. And for me, for example, it's people who know how to maximize my potential by, asking me questions. What are you good at? And then making me find those areas that I'm not strong at, and not necessarily try to look at them as vulnerabilities, but they look at those strengths and say, hey, how do I make you stronger, and continue to flex and mold me into the person that they know that I have to be for that next position. And really, that's what it is. I think it's understanding those leaders who are truly out there looking for you and getting to know you and getting to know the environment. And I think that's really what we have to do. Just forget about the old style of leadership that we've been programmed to think about, and perhaps think about the leaders who truly helped you become a better person and better person within that organization, within the context of the organization, and not just the leader who was the most charismatic or the one who made you the happiest.
It's a shame that leadership a lot of times comes with pay raises and promotions and things like that. So I think a lot of times the people that, do get themselves and play the political game, so to speak, to become a leader, they're probably the least leader. The good news about leadership, though, is you don't need a title to be a leader. You can lead from the lowest level of the organization to the highest level, or you couldn't lead from both of those organizations. So I'd also like to see in the organizations I build that leadership isn't a pay-based incentive. It is a truly skill-based, and then the people that people are going to follow and they're going to trust, and all the elements that you want out of a leader. It's not about the most skilled. Pay them equally, whatever. I mean, people have different motivations, and we're all trying to just make a living here. But at the same time, maybe we as leaders today, or the leaders of companies today, can be more selective in who they choose to promote or whatever. And I think that we could just, as a country, or as a society of organizations, we could probably do a lot better to educate leadership. Not a 2-hour course every 3 months or something like that. Bring some motivational speaker that says, whatever. Because I mean, you go back even to the Leonidas example in 300. I mean, sure, he was dynamic and he gets you fired up, especially if you're in a military mindset like we have, and you like that hard, rough tumble. But if I remember correctly, didn't he get all his men killed?
That's right.
Yeah. So like, what kind of leader is that puts, his people in places where they can't do? And unfortunately, ego stands in the way of leadership so often. Yeah, I'm kind of rambling here. Any more thoughts on that? We can move on to the next. But I do think that, like, leadership in general probably needs to be redrawn, or at least rethought out. And that's why I'm encouraged by someone like you, and this book that's coming out, at least what you told us about it, is just looking at it new in a different way.
Yeah, absolutely. It's starting off with understanding yourself. And I think that's really what it boils down to. And that's where Lead Last starts. It's actually broken up in 3 parts. Who are you? Who are you leading? And what are you doing to create a culture that's going to be a sustained excellence in the future? And the reason I like to start with who are you is because a lot of decisions we make as parents, as leaders, even with our dogs, our furry kids, a lot of them are based on something that happened years ago. And if we're not paying attention and understanding the root cause behind our decisions, then we truly don't understand how we're going to make the next decision. We just know that we're just sort of going through life, just making decisions and saying that's just the way I am. And I had this conversation with one of the parents I was coaching the other day, and they're just like, yeah, that's just the way it is. Their child has some bad grades, and we're trying to work through, okay, why do you want to punish them in this way? Why are you saying that? They're like, well, that just doesn't make any sense. Why wouldn't I do that? And I'm like, well, why would you? You tell me why you would. Where's that coming from? Oh, well, I'm not trying to undo everything my parents did. Okay, let's explore that. What do you mean you're not trying to undo everything your parents did? And you start asking these questions, you realize that you're doing something because you heard that it was a good idea from your parents, who of course weren't perfect themselves, right? And if you ask them, they're like, well, my parents did, and my parents did. And that's the same thing in leadership. It's like we all do these things, we make these decisions without truly understanding why we're making them. Why do we feel offended when we walk in a room and perhaps there's a guy who's been in 19 and a half years, he comes and says something to you, you're like, well, wait a minute, I'm in charge. Why did you feel that way? And why do you feel the need to try to address them in that manner? And vice versa, why would the guy who's been in 19 and a half years come and say, hey, you don't know what you're talking about? Perhaps he's talking about something or that happened in the past. And maybe a lieutenant led him astray in the past. So it's just understanding what it is that comes from your root. Like, what are the things that you may carry with you, to include insecurities that inform your decisions?
Yeah. And I mean, my whole bag is self-leadership. I think everything starts with the who, which is you. And what you were saying about this parent, even that you were talking to last week or whatever, a lot of people have outsourced their beliefs based on societal norms or cultures or whatever the media tells them or social media tells them to do. And I do think that once you get that real deep connection with, why am I doing this? Who am I? Does it match my values, my ethos? I mean, again, that's my whole concept of easy hard versus hard hard. The easy hard is following what everyone else does blindly, but then yet not being able to explain it. So I like your coaching technique there too, where you get them to explain to you both sides of it. Why would I do it? Why wouldn't I do it? And from a leadership perspective, you've got to do that. I remember as a young sergeant one day, a general was supposed to come and look at the barracks, right? And like, really? Does a general need to go see another set of barracks? I don't know. But yeah, maybe he or she might have wanted to do it. But so this guy wanted me to get all my troops up around 10 o'clock at night and sweep the stairs. And I'm just sitting there thinking, that's okay. But if we sweep the stairs today, we're going to come back from PT tomorrow. They're going to get dirty. We're going to get dirty. So I was just like, hey, let's just do it tomorrow. And again, in the military, that wasn't a wise move. So if you're in the military, don't be like me, because like they said, my best thing about being in the military was PC as a get out. Or ET. What is it? ETS? Which one's the final one?
EAS.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. Whatever it was. Yeah, that was what I was best at. But it's that kind of logic that leaders don't think. Just because that sergeant major at the time could tell me as a sergeant to go do this, does that make sense? And do you want to disrupt someone's evening when in the morning we could have knocked it out right on our way back? No one would have thought anything about it. But had I gone in there and woken up all my troops or got them from their video games or whatever they were doing at 25 years ago, not as much video games as probably today at the barracks, but it's that kind of thing, like thoughtful leadership that you do. And going back to this example, military, I was enlisted and I was only enlisted. And the lessons that I learned from, good officers, bad officers, good senior NCOs, bad senior NCOs have set me up through the whole life. Because in the military, if they tell you to do something other than the stairs example, is there a statute of limitations on that? They could come after me. Give me an Article 15 or something coming after me. Yeah, 25 years later. But that, those lessons that we learn, that's where leadership comes from. It's not where I've seen great 20-year-old leaders. I've seen great 80 years old leaders, and I've seen the opposite of both. So give us the second one on that book too, because you did 3. So we talked about the who. What's the next one?
It's going to be who are you leading? And okay, I want to hedge on something you just said.
Yeah, please.
There's some tension when you talk through, that individual, that sergeant major came to you and said, sweep these stairs. And the feedback you give him is, hey, well, this is going to get dirty if we do PT. How about we do it a little bit after? Is that okay? Now, that individual, that leader, and I'm not talking about picking on that sergeant major, I don't know him, but I've been in that position where I say something, they come back and say, oh, this may be a better option, even respectfully. And there's been times it's like, wait a minute. I made the decision. I already put my foot down. Why are you trying to now pick up my foot and make me change my decision? And that's something we have to look out for as leaders. It's all organizations have this same dynamic, especially as young leaders. It's like when you make a decision and you communicate that decision, that doesn't have to be the end all be all. And when we're talking about in the military context, we're talking about anywhere you are, unless it's a life or death situation, you have to make a split second decision. In many cases, we have the opportunity to receive feedback on our decision before anybody has to start executing said decision. And I think that's what we have to start looking at is if somebody's giving you pushback, it's not necessarily that they're insubordinate or they're trying to overtake your job or overrun you as a leader. Perhaps you need to start exploring, why do you even feel that way in the first place? And that goes back to who are you? Maybe you just feel insecure as a leader in the first place and you felt like you had to go in there and demand that they do it. And no matter what they said, you came in, you're trying to, now you're going to now reassert your dominance as the authoritative source. In reality, you may find out that the decision you made was wrong in the first place. And I think those are the kind of things as leaders, as we talk through those scenarios, it just helps us when we face them. And that's one of the things that we talk about is in the military, I'm sure is scenario-based training. And I recommend that for any organization. especially for leaders. It's as you go into this situation, you know for a fact there's always going to be somebody in the organization who's going to challenge you. And in this case, in this way, it's saying that, hey, that decision you made or that what you just told me is probably not the best. Can we do this? How are you going to respond to that? And that's where you're putting yourself through these scenarios and just figuring out, okay, number one, who's that person that's going to do it most likely? And number two, how am I going to respond? Am I going to respond with anger or frustration or disappointment?
Mm-hmm.
Or am I going to figure out a way to tell them I value your opinion and we're going to do this? Or you just say, hey, I value your opinion, but we're going to continue to do what I just said.
Yeah, what you were just talking about jogged a memory for me that when I was in the Army band, so probably the pogest, the weakest Army guy you can have right here. But when I was stationed in Korea, we play a lot of events at generals' houses. They had a lot of dignitaries, and I only use that to set up the story, but. There was a rash of DUIs happening in the enlisted ranks at one point. And one night, one of these generals that we played at their house, he was interesting for a general. He would always have us sit with him and whoever his guest was for a while they were talking pre-dinner and those kind of things. Mm-hmm. And they were talking about, it was another general from up north, and they were talking about these and what are you going to do with it? And the head general was like, oh, I'm going to just make it so no one that's E6 and below can have a driver's license in this country anymore. And the other general said, sir, while that is an approach, I want you to do this before you make that decision. Wake up in the morning and write down everything you couldn't do that you did today if you couldn't drive tomorrow. And he goes, I know you don't drive yourself, you have drivers and all these things. But he said, but put yourself in that person's shoes with the family over here and all this kind of things. And, I'd forgotten about it until just now, but what a great leader. So you have two kind of equal guys. I think one was a 3-star, the other one was a 4-star. So they kind of equals at that point, but at the same time, it's like one guy just saying, hey, just be rational about it. And that Sergeant Major, I didn't tell him I was going to do that. I just executed my own order. He gave me an order. I just knew it would be clean when he wanted it to, and but in this case, if we just sit back, and that's where good leadership is. So like in your case, as a 20-something-year-old lieutenant, you could have gone to that Sergeant Major and ask about decisions you made. And I think that's the true side of leadership, to say, hey, I don't know everything. Like we all say we're not the smartest person in the room, but do we act like that?
Right.
So that is a beautiful concept, but I'm keeping you from your next point. So go on with that one.
Yeah, absolutely. And it segues perfectly because it's talking about who are you leading? And that really tells us that we have to have a relationship with people. And I'm not talking about some kind of, inappropriate relationship or everybody has to be friends in the office and nothing like that. But it's having some form of relationship so they feel open and safe to come talk to you and have those kind of conversations. And that is just driven through interacting with them. There's some people who aren't that open, right? So I'm a communications officer, so I guess technically I'll be a pogue as well. But you have all these people that have different backgrounds, right? So I have guys that are extremely technical, and I have some that are just, they're like the Marine, but they don't know anything about computer or radio or anything communications related, and anything in between, right? So you have to be careful how you interact with these Marines, because if you put one of those in the wrong category, then you find yourself interacting with them in a weird way or not maximizing their potential. And so just getting to know them on that level. You don't have to go around asking, how's your wife and kids and all that kind of stuff, unless that truly is your personality. I had, somebody I worked with in the past, a good friend of mine. She was really good at that. I mean, she could remember kids' names, dogs' names, you name it. She was really good at that. And so the Marines trusted her in that way. That was just their relationship they had. For me, I was almost more like, the guy who just does dad jokes all the time, and we had that kind of relationship. They knew if I went out to PT with them, it was going to be a fun PT, but it was going to be hard. And it's just the relationship that we built. But that relationship we built was extremely important. And it was only because I got to take some time to get to know them. And what I recommend with people is just start asking questions, like these leading questions. Don't walk in with your notebook. There's something that I got so frustrated with. That was the actual order I got. It said, show me what they talked about. Show me where they talked about their family. And I'm like, I don't have anything to show you. It's up here, because I had a natural conversation with this individual, just getting to know them. I didn't want to have a phone or a recorder or a notebook in between me and that person. And that's what I think we have to get back towards. It's just getting to know humans, building relationships. And I think that's where it starts as leaders. It's just when you get to know them, you're able to actually help influence them. You get to know their ambitions. Some people, believe it or not, they just want to be average. They just want to come to work, do their job, and go home. And
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with that. I think
Right.
at times we want to say, oh, wow, you have no ambition. You have no initiative. It's like, what are you asking that person to do? Are they doing it? Yes or no? And is that what their goal is? If their goal is to be average, then okay, leave them alone. That way you can focus on the people who want to excel. Very few want
Yeah.
to come in and be below average. But if you just let people be average and they told you they want to be average, let them be average. And then those people who say, hey, I want to move on to this next thing. When I get out of the Marine Corps, I want to do this. Or when I go to this corporation, I want to be a team lead or whatever it may be. That's where those are the ones who you can invest your time helping to
Yeah.
mentor and guide them in that same direction. And that's really starts, like I said, with getting to know people. That's really the second part of Lead Last.
Yeah, I love that, getting to know people, because I saw this many times in my short military career, that being in the Army band, they liked seeing rank on your sleeves when you performed and do all this stuff. So they forced people into promotions. And I saw so many people who just wanted to be a flute player and do their secondary duty, whether it was admin or whatever. And they promoted them and promoted them, made them, forced them into promotions. And that person lost their joy. They became a worse flute player. They became a worse soldier. They became a worse admin. Everything about their performance got worse. And eventually they got out of the military. Whereas if they allow that person to stay, I know there's like certain advancements you have to make over time, but you don't need to be in this position, in 2 years. Maybe 10 years is fine for you. Maybe you grow into it later. We force people into there. Another thing you said too about like getting to know people. A lot of times I see forced leadership, especially in the human dynamics of it. I remember during the lockdown or whatever we want to call it, that happened in 2020, and we all started working from home. Somehow all these managers, they called them leaders, were then told to call people and check in on them. And it was the most awkward conversation. Someone that you had a professional relationship with, and that was fine, started calling you and say, well, how is your wife? And be like, you don't even know my wife. Like, that's like too personal. So because it was forced for them. But, like, again, if you're that type of person, like the lady you mentioned, who knows everyone's pets, dogs, or whatever, that's supernatural. So be the leader that you are. So not only do you like look, so who you're leading also goes back to then how you lead them, because you don't want to force it. Any other thoughts on that part of the book? Or?
Yeah, that's a great point, because a lot of times we tend to try to flex ourselves or adapt to people.
Yeah.
And that's why I tell people, especially young leaders, in context of who you getting to know your people you lead, or getting to know people on a personal level, you can be flexible. That means you can provide them what they need, but not malleable. In other words, you're not walking into an environment and saying, oh yeah, how are your kids and wife? And it's just not natural. I've been there.
Right.
Recently last year, I was talking to someone, and our relationship was perfect. In my opinion, it was a professional relationship. We talked about a lot of things. We go deep detail, intellectual detail on a lot of different things. And then we get to the end of the conversation. They're like, okay, so how's your wife? And it was very scripted. And I was like, well, what? That doesn't that. We're so far from that, it's not even funny, but it was okay. I accepted that as our relationship.
Right.
And I think that's the most important thing. You have to understand that, being flexible doesn't mean that you just go out and now become this charismatic person who cares all about the kids and all about the families, because if that's not you, it's going to very quickly show. You're going to be I've met people who are very methodical in their questioning, and it almost feels like an interrogation instead of an actual conversation. So just be yourself.
Yeah. Being yourself is the true leadership, because if you force it and you try to, it's like anything. If you force it, you're gonna make mistakes. You're gonna be awkward. You're not gonna have that impact that you want. And not everyone is dynamic or charismatic. I know that's what we see, because we see the 300, we see the presidents, we see all these people who with this image of just like greatness. But the most influential people in my life are probably people that are in the background, who do care, who do know that your wife was sick or someone, write you a note and just say, hey, I'm thinking about you, praying for your wife, something like that. It takes all types of people. And that's why us as leaders and the leaders of the future, the more we're cognizant of that, I think it's going to make us a better society in general, because forced, I don't know, attention, that's not the right word, forced like empathy, forced any of that stuff, it doesn't ring well. And some leaders can get by with it because they have enough rank on their collar, or a title on the wall or something like that, but for those of us who are just starting out, especially the younger people, be who you are, because you can lead from any position and any personality. You don't have to be, in fact, you're probably not leading, because if you change your personality, you're not leading yourself, which violates my whole theory, or not my theory, but what I believe, the self-leadership theory, that you're going to not lose it. You're going to outsource all your abilities. So
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things, that's why I love, you're talking about like the societal expectations. And that's one thing I caution going into the last part of it, which is about culture. I always caution young leaders about against this, is because sometimes we pawn things off on the system or the society, not realizing that once you become a leader, you become that system, or you become the person who's responsible for that culture, that society. And so what questions are you, or what are you doing to truly set yourself up or set your organization up to have people be successful within the organization? And that's what the culture is all about. That's really what leadership is all about. It's about accountability, even when it gets tough. It's about understanding people, like how do you make them, to bring about the magic, as we like to call it, the magic of creativity. How do you bring that about? And those are really the hard questions that people are asked. And I always tell them, it's like, yeah, listen, it's about creating systems and repeatable processes that allows you to continue to have thriving results. That's really what it's all about. But that all starts with understanding the people who are in the organization and understanding what they need to be successful. And that's how you set up that culture. But you're right. I think that it is a societal expectation. There's many things that society gives us as far as like the people and where people come from, their background, that are extremely important. But once they come to that organization, you're the system. And I've heard too many leaders, especially more senior leaders, it's always funny, talk about, this is a system problem. Or in the Marine Corps, we say the big green machine, all these things. I'm like, well, at some point, that big green machine is you. The more senior you get, that's you. You're the system. You're the person who's responsible for the policies, and you're the person responsible for telling people what to do and what not to do. And so if there's a problem with the system, I always tell you, look in the mirror and see if you are the system that you're referring to.
Yeah, that self-awareness is critical for all leaders and all people, I think. And I do think that we've lost a lot of that self-awareness, because it's so easy to blame someone else. It's not my fault. It's your fault. It's the system's fault. Well, maybe it is, but what can you do about it?
Right.
And everyone can do something about any system, no matter what, even if it's just your attitude. I mean, I had this drill sergeant that I would always say, it doesn't suck enough. And that those words ring true to me all the time. Like, yeah, maybe I'm cold, maybe I'm wet, but at least no one's shooting at me, or at least it's not, I'm not on fire, or I got food to eat. I mean, there's always a positive. So, do what we can as leaders to change the system, or integrate a bad system. Sometimes it's just bad. Just show up, suck it up, and do it, because you know what? Whether you like it or not, it's still going to happen.
Right.
Control what you can control, and then adapt accordingly. But so what's the third element here on this that you're on?
Yeah, absolutely. So the third element is really just how do you influence that culture that we're just talking about?
Yeah, good segue again.
Yeah, it's really just finding ways to understand what the culture is. And when I talk to especially young leaders, one of the biggest things that they want to do is go in and make change. Especially, you're fresh out of college, or you're fresh out of another unit, whatever it may be. You're fresh, you're excited. You have many ideas to make this great. Again, the company may have hired you. I did an internship, for example, with Tyson before I joined the Marine Corps. And I was like, okay, if the company hired me from an internship, that's because they love my energy, they love my skill. So now I got to bring them me. I want them to see all of Lou when I show up on day one. But in many cases, we need to understand the culture first. We need to understand what's going on, what systems exist, what are the successes, right? It's not every organization is, some, bad organization that needs to be improved by you, the savior of all organizations. Sometimes it's just simple, what's going on, what are we succeeding, and where can we improve? I learned from General Colin Powell. He talked about that 30-day period that you need to just observe.
Yeah.
If you have the opportunity, I know in some cases you may not have that opportunity, but there's always that observation period where you're just getting to know the who, what, when, where, why, all these things about your organization before you try to implement change or try to bring your great ideas. Because the problem is, if you come in and you have no idea about the culture, and even if you were successful at another organization, and we see this in college football a lot, they can be very successful at the NFL level, come to college and not succeed, or vice versa. Why is that? Because the culture is different. There's different players, there's different teams. And even within college, there's different teams and cultures and play schemes. There's different things that go on in every organization that we just have to be aware of. So that's what the third part is all about, is how do you influence that culture? But it all begins with you just taking time to assess that culture and see what's going on before you make change. And that assessment period, again, comes with asking the right questions, going around and asking people who've been there for a while and the new people. You know, you have some people that come in with you, they may have some great ideas as well. So go and ask everybody, what's going on? What can we improve? How can we do it? In a way that's not, of course, you're jumping over in somebody else's land, but just get to know the organization.
No, it's, again, going back to my band stories, you saw a lot of change in commands, and I can't remember how many people came in and say all policies and procedure remain in effect until further notice or something thereabouts. And, that's so true because, they've got the stick from this day forward, but I'm sure they were taught or they observed over time that, hey, it's best to go take a look at it, because if you come in there and just disrupt the core, first of all, you're new. Nobody likes the new guy. And then second of all, if you disrupt everything you know to be true and say tomorrow it's going to be different, then, one, you're a communications guy. You probably don't have time to communicate that. And that's another really key aspect of leadership, and you're fortunate to be a communications officer, because communication, I think, is one of the tenements of good leaders, because if you don't communicate properly and talk about changes to the organization or changes to the way you're going to do business, people speculate. And I think speculation is a cancer in any organization, and that's where a good leader can stop all that. Communicate what you can. I know they can't always tell everything, especially these big, multi-billion-dollar companies and secrets and all that kind of things. But you can tell people enough that they don't speculate. I have a firm believer that you can keep people in the loop. They're not mushrooms, so just keep them in the loop and go from there. You have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. So the key thing about this is speculations become rumors. And somehow rumors are always true. And I used to always think about this because people used to say perception is reality. And I used to get so mad about that. I'm like, perception is not reality. That's just somebody's perception. But that is true. Well, somebody's perception is their reality. So if you have a bunch of people that think something is going on and they truly believe in this rumor about you or your policies or your system that you're trying to in place, it's going to be hard. You're going to be working uphill essentially because their perception is now reality, because you allowed that speculation because you weren't a clear communicator, or you just came in way too high to try to make a bunch of changes. You allowed that speculation to run rampant, which became rumors and just became reality for people. And so it's just looking out for that to make sure that as you go through this and you hear these things, it's sometimes the best thing to do is just to get with everybody and start having conversations instead of trying to do like piecemeal. But being transparent and being communicative is extremely important.
And that perception is reality is so true. And I think, outside of leadership, the cultural problems that we have today, this party versus this party, this religion versus this religion. And people talk about speak your truth or your self-truth or whatever like that. Well, what that really is your perception. And you're right. If you perceive something to be true, no matter what I say to you, if you're not open-minded as a person, you're never going to change your opinion. And so that whole dogma, I mean, it is a leadership thing, because I don't think leaders should have dogma, because you never know. What did Aristotle say? The true sign of wisdom is someone who's willing to change his mind. So perception is reality, but maybe it's a false reality. I don't know, but I think that is a good leadership thing we can all learn, especially when we're like coming new to organizations and all that kind of thing, because maybe we should redefine leadership instead of, getting someone to do something they don't want to do. Maybe getting a team to do something that benefits others. Maybe that could be a different definition of leadership, and it can encompass your 3 pillars and everything we've talked about here, instead of just making it focused on, I'm the leader, you go do, right?
Yeah.
I think it's a broken definition, and, maybe we redefined it today, but I'm sure someone else came up with it too, right? Nothing's new, right? It's just 2 dudes talking.
Yeah, that's important too, because a lot of times people don't necessarily connect with the bottom line. They don't connect with the mission itself. And I know that sounds hard because we want them to align with the organization's vision and values. And generally speaking, I think people do that before they join organizations. But in many cases, they're not doing things just for the mission. They're doing things for the people around them. And usually it's either the people to their left or right, or maybe even for their own selfish reasons, right? Because we're all human.
Right.
We all have our own ambitions and our own reasons for doing things. And really it's getting to the bottom of knowing that. It's like, okay, if I'm just influencing people to get them to do things that they don't want to do, that it's going to be black or white. It's going to be, hey, you're not doing this, so I have to do this. Where in reality, people aren't that binary, right? People are very complex and their minds are very complex. And again, if you get to know them, it's setting up an environment to where they can actually grow and develop, and they're actually now looking out for other teams and what they're doing for others. I think it does help out a lot. And long term, it's going to accomplish mission, and long term, it's going to help impact the bottom line, because people are now invested in each other and not necessarily just invested in, what you're saying, or just in some cases just doing what you said just because you have the authority to give it to them.
Yeah, leadership is hard, and we've covered a lot of different areas about why it is hard, and that's why I think it's so important that people start thinking this way. I mean, put yourself in someone else's shoes. I mean, there's a lot of talk in the coaching hemisphere today about empathy. Well, what does empathy really mean? How do you see what I'm saying? Put myself when I was in your position. That's a real simple way, I think, to make good, sound decisions. Is like, remember the time when that guy knocked on your door at 10 o'clock and said, sweep the stairs. Like, you can prevent doing that to the next person. And so don't be bitter about when it happened to you. Learn from that and adjust and adapt and go. So I know we've talked a lot about that. I know you've if you want, let's talk a little bit about, because you really wrote these children's books, and I know now you help parents in the leadership of children. You want to talk a little bit about that, just to get your word out there, so people are looking for that kind of thing. They now know a guy to contact.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So first of all, I wrote these children's books because it's all about connection. It's all about what we've been talking about. It's finding ways to now connect with our children. And I originally wrote it for myself. I'm a very young parent, right? So I started off when I was 19. I had my first child, not intentional, but that's what happened. And so now she's 16, right? And so all the lessons I've learned over the years, just trying to become a better father for my 3 children now, has been something that I always want to try to help people out with. Because I realize that there's a lot of young people out there who are parents, young and old, that just want to connect with their children and figure out how to guide them through this world. Because there's so many influences around that we have to learn to either combat or collaborate with. And that's what I've realized. And so through my children's books, that's what I hope to do. It's called the Parent-Child Connect series. And the idea is that a parent and a child, or an adult and a child, are sitting down and enjoying these books together. And it's because I want them to start with this connection, this idea of finding something they have in common, and maybe not exploring like all the conversations that we're going to grow from it. For example, one of my books called Crow from the Shadow is truly about defeating that inner thought that tells you that you cannot be what you want to be, or you cannot be what you're put on this earth to be. So yes, you can explore that idea, or you can explore something else entirely. What it is doing is establishing those relationships that we talked about. So that way you can grow and have those moments, those true, transparent, and honest and memorable moments in the future. So those are my children's books. There's really a Parent-Child Connect series. It's designed in rhyming format because, I am a bit of a musician, not as good as you, because the Marine Corps didn't recruit me for music, but it's a little rhyme, and I love that because it keeps the children engaged. They enjoy it. And quite honestly, it's put me in a position to go to classrooms and read to children and really inspire that next generation, as I love to do. So that's really what my children's books are all about.
Even outside of those books, I mean, it's so cool to see people like you to start. I mean, essentially what you're doing is you're teaching children how to be leaders from the start, and you're teaching their parents. Because I think a lot of times, I don't have children, but I observe others who do. They forget that that's their number one leadership responsibility, is raising, however many they have, and getting that into people's cognitive abilities, and at least where they start having the conversations. Even if they pick the book up because they like the pictures or whatever, it can start early. And I think that's one thing that we need to start doing. It's good to see you're doing it with your kids and the ones that you touch, the parents and child you deal with. But imagine the world if we all taught people all these lessons that you talked about, early on, and just kept reinforcing it, instead of, oh, you need to do this because you'll get fame, or you'll get on Instagram star, or, you'll make $1 million a day or something like that. It's not what it's all about. It is all about connection, which I think leadership's all about connection, to simplify. I mean, so funny, we always try to simplify leadership because it's hard, but really connections are hard. So it's all hard, but what is your mindset, and getting these children going is fantastic. So yeah, you've got links. They're available. We'll put them out there. Check them out, especially if you got young children. And then you also do coaching too, as part of this as well.
Yes. So I do. The first thing I love and enjoy the most is engaging with children. So I do writing workshops. I read aloud to them. I do all these things. Really, is to do exactly what you're describing. It's to be a part of their community. And that's what I always encourage people to do, adults in general, is if you can be a part of a child's community, just do it. I mean, everybody has their skill, no matter what it is. For example, I was impacted by coaches. I was impacted by people who taught me how to play music. I was impacted by those when I was in drill team, Army drill team, although I joined the Marine Corps, Army drill team at my church. So find a way to be a part of some child's community. But yes, you can find them on Amazon. You can find them wherever books are sold. You just search for my name. I know it's a hard name to say.
Yeah.
But once you learn how to spell it, I promise you.
It's hard for me to say, not for you. But there's a lot of words that are hard for me to say. Just ask my wife, ask my mom, who's an English professor. Yeah, they'll fill you in on that real quickly, you know. But no, that's pretty cool. And you know, I know our time's kind of flown by. We talked about a lot of things. We even started that we were going to talk about setting goals and do all that stuff. So maybe that'll be a follow-on conversation we can have about that, because goals are definitely important, especially in the coaching and then as leaders as well. But any final thoughts or any words you want to say to kind of put a bow on this? Or
yeah, the biggest thing is just be there for people. I think we're in a world where we're so divided that sometimes a simple smile is really all it takes. So if we just find a way to be there, be supportive of other people, and I think that helps our society out in a much better way.
Man, that is so beautiful. And this theme keeps coming up in my life. One gentleman I talked to yesterday said, you know, we need to stop being human doings and human beings. And that being and that presence and having this awareness that you're bringing to children, that you're bringing to leaders. And when this next book comes out, I mean, it is so valuable. And going back to the whole thing that we said earlier, don't be the smartest person in the room. I tell people I've never been the smartest person in the room, and sometimes I'm in a room by myself, because there's always something you can learn. I mean, God can teach you things in quiet moments. You can learn in quiet moments. Get that ego aside, be there. And I love too what you said about just a smile. As I think I've told you, you know, when I was battling my deepest depression, sometimes all I wished was that somebody would smile at me or wave at me. And we both live in the Northern Virginia area. There's not a lot of that going on. And it's gotten to the point now when I walk the dogs, I wave at everyone, because I don't know what they're going through.
That's right.
And if they see a big goofy guy with two goofy dogs waving at them, my wife always like, oh, who was that? I was like, I have no idea. But maybe they need a smile. Maybe they need some that's leadership. You don't have to be CEO or Sergeant Major or General of the Army or whatever it is. You can just be a leader wherever you are. And I said the last word, and I'm terrible at this. I need to give it. So do you want another last word, or
I mean, well, I'll do my best to keep it short, but you reminded me of a FedEx driver I had actually in this area. He would come by, give a very happy greeting. How's it going? And he'll say, see you tomorrow. And that just reminded me of that feeling I had by actually looking forward to seeing him. Not because he had boxes, he was delivering somebody else's house, but because he truly was excited to see you. And that's all it takes. This guy is a FedEx truck driver. He doesn't have, I don't know what his platform is. He may be an influencer. I don't really know. But he's using that platform that he has as a driver to encourage others and be there for somebody. So I love what you're saying. That's beautiful.
That is so cool. So, you know, thank you so much, Lou, for coming on. And like I said, I encourage everyone who's listening to check him out, and we'll get your book out in the spring. When it comes out, I'll announce it on this. And, you know, I'm certainly going to be reading it. So I hope everyone else did. But thank you for your time today and for coming up and being the first live guest. This has been truly amazing. And what everyone doesn't see is that we had a lot of technical difficulties, because I thought I had this thing wired out. But of course, Murphy's Law, once someone shows up, it all goes, all plans, you know, first contact, you know, they all go off. But anyways, for those listening, thank you. As always, I'm Bobby Shelton. And until next time, keep leading yourself, be present, just be there for others. Take these lessons that we learned today so you can lead both yourself and the communities and organizations you serve better. Thanks, everyone.